and sovereignty of New Zealand is going to be seriously compromised by this legislation. And I have a final suggestion, Mr Chairman, for the title to this Act, which could be the mixed results of the sale of strategic assets.
I call the honourable member Chris Hipkins.
Mr Chairman, I appreciate this opportunity to take a call on the title and commencement of this piece of legislation, and I want to talk about the title and the commencement, but I also want to talk about the amendment that that I have lodged to these particular provisions, and I'll come to those in a minute. But first of all, is the Mixed Ownership Model Bill an appropriate title for this piece of legislation? And clearly it is not. Mixed Ownership Model, what a load of tosh. What this is the Asset Sales Bill. This is the bill that sells the assets that generations of New Zealanders have built up to pass on to future generations of New Zealanders, and this government wants to sell them. And they should be a lot more upfront than using these weasel words like mixed ownership model. It's a bit like their plan for ACC, where they talk about increasing competition. Actually, what they mean is privatisation. And they should be upfront. They should stop using these weasel words to describe their privatisation plans. And this is exactly that. It is a privatisation bill that will result in assets currently owned by all New Zealanders being sold off. Plain and simple. That's what this bill amounts to. They should be a lot more upfront than trying to use some tricky title in order to avoid being upfront with New Zealanders about what this bill actually means. Now, the supplementary order paper that I have tabled, number 53, prevents the enactment of this bill unless there is a 75% majority in this House. Because this government does not have a mandate to sell these assets. This government has no mandate, and if they think they've got a mandate, they'll vote in favour of this amendment that will require them to get a 75% majority to pass this legislation. They wouldn't be afraid of that if they thought New Zealanders really supported it, but they don't. They know New Zealanders don't, because this government, the government we've got here, who is forcing this legislation through, was only voted for by less than a third of the voting age population in this country. Only a third of the country actually voted for this government. That is not a mandate to do this. People overwhelmingly oppose this legislation. Opinion polls after opinion polls have proved it. And if the government really thought that New Zealanders supported this, they wouldn't be ramming it through Parliament before the referendum gets off the ground. Because there is absolutely no doubt in my mind, that there will be a referendum, because enough New Zealanders will sign the petition for there to be a referendum, and the result will overwhelmingly oppose these asset sales. So if this government really think that there is a mandate for them to do this, why are they trying to push it through? Why are they trying to push it through before New Zealanders have had a chance to have a say on it? And they are pushing it through. They are. That's right. My colleague Leanne Dalzell has pointed out they don't want to hear what the public has to say. Well, I say to them, they can listen to the public now, or they can listen to them in 2.5 years' time, because the New Zealand public do not support this legislation. The amendment that I have put forward is a very reasonable one, where the government are proposing a piece of legislation that in effect overrides the law of the land. There are provisions in this legislation that allow the government to change primary legislation by regulation without reference back to Parliament. That's a constitutional issue. And before they do that, they should have a 75% majority in Parliament before they do that. If this government are going to pass laws that in effect give them the power to change other laws, that requires more than one vote, a one-vote majority. It requires more than just getting Peter Dunn to vote for it. It requires getting more support from the Parliament. Now, the Parliament has shown that where there is a genuine need for those sorts of powers, we will come together and vote for them. We voted for them after the Christchurch earthquake. because we believe that the government did need some extra power and some extra ability to respond. There is no justification at all to give them the power to change the law by regulation when it relates to asset sales. None at all. And they are going to give themselves that power with a one-vote majority in Parliament. A one-vote majority in Parliament, and that is wrong. It should require, for that sort of change to our legislation, to give themselves that kind of unfettered power, they should require more than a one-vote majority in Parliament. So the amendment that I have put forward, that would require them to have a 70... Mr Chairman.
I call the honourable member Cam Calder.
I move the question be now put.
Very good. No, I don't think so. I'm going to call the Honourable Leanne Dalzell.